Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Awesome Dynamic Show. Today, we're going to be talking about some Amazon issues and concerns, and we want to start off by saying hello to everybody. I'm Terry Levin, the Director of Sales for Awesome Dynamic. I have Paul, Tim, and Blake, our usual suspects, with us today. We are missing Robin. Robin's out today, but we're going to try to go on without her and see if we can make it happen. So I'm going to turn it right over to Tim, who's going to get us started on our Amazon topic of the day. Tim, have at it.
Great. Thank you so much, Terry. All right, I'm going to bring up our presentation here, and we'll be going this through slide by slide. Today, we're going to talk about product photography and optimization, the policies, best practices, and equipment used to do that. So to start out, first thing that we need to talk about, if this slide will advance for me, thank you, general standards and requirements for all photos on Amazon. So the first thing to keep in mind is that whenever you create any photos or any pictures of photos, they must be of or pertain to the product being sold. I think we've seen a lot of listings where you see the product shown with a lot of different props and a lot of different, like let's say if it's a phone case, you see it with a phone in the picture as well. You have to be very careful because sometimes people can be confused and think that that the phone is included with it, even though it's clearly not. So that's the one reason why that's really front and center is that the photos must contain items that pertain to or are part of the product. The second item is that all photos must be in focus and well lit with realistic color and smooth edges. The most important part of this is in focus and well lit. I think we've all seen different listings that have photos of products that are poorly lit. You know, it looks just very dark. You really can't get the detail in the product. They use some kind of point and shoot camera or the camera on their phone. And while granted, there is been a marked improvement in the quality of cameras that are included in our cell phones nowadays. I think that it's still something where people still aren't careful about how they take those photos. So those are also really important items. Any questions before I move ahead?
So far, so good.
All right. Next item is that the pure white backgrounds on all photos are preferred. That pure white is probably, again, a very important distinction, and we'll go into more detail into it when we talk about the main image, which is a requirement that it be a pure white background. But this is oftentimes a part that people miss, and they, again, if they just take a picture of a product, you know, sitting on a counter or you know, sitting on a table or sitting on the floor, it just doesn't look very professional. And probably the most important reason why you really want to make sure it's a pure white background is that it will actually blend in with Amazon's interface. So you oftentimes will see sometimes a box that is around the product itself. Then that usually means that they don't have a pure white background. And so Amazon does prefer that you do that with all product images, but especially the main image, which, again, we'll go into more detail later on. This is, again, reiterating on that first point that I said earlier, that photos must not contain gratuitous or confusing additional objects. Again, going back to the idea of the phone case. If you take a picture of a phone case while it's on a phone or next to a phone, it has to be very, very obvious that that product is not does not include that phone itself. I don't think many people actually do that, but I know that there's plenty of products that it can sometimes be confusing what exactly is and is not included with that product. Anything to add or any questions about those?
No, I think we're going good so far.
Excellent. This is something that I think a lot of people violate the policy on, and that's having text, logos, and inset images on the products themselves. I know that for some products, it's very difficult sometimes to explain the benefits and features of a product without calling out certain features by text or with graphics. But that specifically is not allowed by Amazon. One thing that we do recommend to get around this particular issue is that oftentimes product packaging has this kind of information on it. And it is certainly allowable to take photos of part of the product packaging or the whole thing itself, like the back of it or the sides of it, that do contain that kind of information that you want to include in your listing and your photos. So best practice is to take photos of that rather than trying to take an existing image and trying to add all sorts of extra graphics and extra text to it. Pornographic and offensive materials are not allowed. I think that's pretty straightforward. You know, Amazon wants to maintain it as a friendly environment for families, and even though Amazon does sell, let's say, adult products, it is behind a certain wall that most public viewers cannot get to easily, and they will usually still put restrictions on those types of products that you can't have still have offensive images on the listing itself.
Okay.
All right, so next is going to be about photos that you have rights to. This is a really important thing. You want to make sure that you have all necessary rights to the images you submit. A really easy way to make sure this happens is that you take all the photos yourself. You don't go to the manufacturer's website, or you don't go to do a Google search for it and just pull off the first image that you see off of Google Images, or again off of the manufacturer's websites. Those images are probably copywritten, even if it's not, let's say, registered copyright. There is still an implicit copyright on all images that the original photographer takes. So to be able to get around this particular problem, all you have to do is just take the photos yourself. There are sometimes copyrights on the product itself. Like, let's say if the product is a piece of art, then you sometimes have to be very careful about taking photos of that and putting it on Amazon. Now, that being said, I know for a fact that Amazon does not allow you to sell fine art on their platform. I know that's one of the particular items that you're not supposed to sell on Amazon. But let's say if you take a picture of it, of your product in front of a really famous building. Some buildings are copywritten where you can't take photos of them. I know especially in Europe that's the case. But just something to keep in mind whenever you're selecting your photos is that you actually take all the photos yourself, or have all rights to be able to use those photos first.
Hey, Tim,
Any
I have a
questions or
question.
comments on that? Sure.
Yeah. Um, let's just say, for example, someone doesn't know how to take good photography or doesn't have a nice DSLR camera. Are there any options for these people to get some legal photos that we know of to replace
Yeah, well,
that?
like I said before, there it has been a marked improvement in how well like iPhones and Android phones are able to take photos. That's a good um, last resort, I could say, if you can't take photos with a better camera. There are also other options where you can send off your products to a professional photographer and they can take them for you. You can also use what are called trying to remember what they're called, but they're photos that anyone can use. Like 123rf.com and Billion Photos both offer what are called
royalty free.
stock. Yes, royalty-free photography. Thank you, Paul. It's royalty-free photography. Stock photography is another name for it, where you can use those images and you just have to pay for the rights to be able to use them. There are sometimes royalty-free, as in public domain photos that you might be able to use, which means that they're open for anyone to be able to use. But those, you really have to be careful. It's sometimes a minefield trying to figure out what is public domain, what is acceptable to use, and that's where purchasing your stock photography off of well-known websites is usually the best route to go if you decide to use stock photography.
Great, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
So next, if it will actually go to the next slide for me, there we go. Other products or objects are allowed to help demonstrate the scale or use of the product. We like to call these lifestyle photos, where you can show the product in use. You can show the product with other props or accessories that are oftentimes used with it. And you can also show people, like let's say if you're selling a t-shirt, show someone wearing the t-shirt. Those are all called lifestyle photos, and it's all around the whole concept where you want to be able to demonstrate how the product is supposed to be used. But again, going back to the first item that we said is that they must that any accessories or any products that are in there, they must be of or pertain to the product being sold and can't be confusing as to what exactly is included.
And then, Tim, that also makes it seem like the pure white backgrounds are preferred. So it's again, the word is preferred, not necessary. But and then the next one, no gratuitous or confusing additional objects. And I'm sure we'll look at some examples of where you can kind of go with how you're going to be framing your product photography and what's obviously not allowed at all. But we'll take a look at that together. But go ahead and to your next point there.
Great. So the next item is you can use cropped or close-up photos. So going back to the taking pictures of your packaging so that you can demonstrate additional features or items that you want to call out as to what makes your product unique or better than the competition. So you can take a photo of the back of the packaging. You can crop out parts of it that don't pertain to what you want to show for that particular image, and that is perfectly allowed. Or if you want to, let's say, call out a certain feature on a product, you want to zoom in and show just that particular product, then that would certainly work as well. All right. And this goes back again to the lifestyle photos and trying to add more context to the product being used. Amazon does allow you to use backgrounds and environments when taking a photo. So let's say if you're trying to sell a trampoline, you might want to, take a picture of that in someone's backyard with kids playing on it. You might want to show, let's say if you're selling a baseball bat, maybe you want to show someone swinging the bat in a baseball field. So those are just some general ideas and places where you certainly can do that in some of the additional photos. And lastly, you can add up to 8 images in most categories. Amazon is always changing the requirements for different categories, and sometimes you're using a template for old listings, and sometimes with the newer listings have different requirements and different options available to you. But in general, if you plan on producing about 8 images, you're going to fully optimize your listing by having at least one photo in every single slot Amazon gives you. So doing more is always better. I know it might sometimes be hard to be able to think, well, my product, it's kind of self-explanatory, really can't show it in use, and, I don't think it's really useful to have more photos than less. I can tell you that the most important thing, and I know I keep on saying that, but one of the most important things is that you always want to keep in mind customers cannot touch and feel your product. They are not able to use they're not able to use the product, they're not able to pick it up in their hands, and they're not able to touch it, feel it, and have you be able to use it before they actually make a purchase. So you have to more or less give them an experience through using the particular or through the photos of showing the product in use before they decide to buy it.
That is one thing I wanted to comment on, Tim.
Yes.
That point that you just made about not being able to touch and feel it. If I go to the store, I can pick it up, I can look at it from any angle I desire. I can open the box, I can look at the product after I take it out of the box, I can look at the top, the bottom, the sides, from different angles, all those different sorts of things. And it just floors me sometimes when I go to Amazon. I see that they are showing the top or front view of the product, and I cannot see the rest of it. Even the box. A lot of times I want to read what's on the box. And I've seen tons of listings that have a picture of the product itself, but they don't even include the box that comes with it that might have additional information. And the bullets that are on the listing may have some of the information that's on the box, or the description might have some of the information, but I want to see the box. And that's one huge area of opportunity that you can really get into, where a lot of people are using Photoshop to show different things about their product on the pictures. Well, if you really design your box so it's got a lot of great information, or even an insert that would be in that box, then you can take a picture of it and put it on there. So it also serves as a way to get around some of these regulations, because you're taking pictures of something the customer will actually receive. So it really comes back to using these photos so people can understand that this product is right for them is so important, because the pictures tell, that the old adage is a picture shows or tells 1,000 words. Is worth 1,000 words is the saying. So if you have 8 pictures that show a lot of information about the products, that's 8,000 words you're communicating to that particular person. So Tim
Excellent
or
point.
Terry,
Yes.
when out of all the different listings that you've looked at, how many do you think really have the 8 photos that we recommend? How many would you say, in all the different people that are contacting you every day with their different Amazon listings, are we seeing that they're getting a significant amount of pictures on their listing, or they're lacking in general?
I would say that most of the listings we see have one picture. Sometimes we get into 2 and 3. We see almost none that I see have lifestyle pictures with them. So that's one of the main issues that I'm seeing constantly.
And Blake has a few different links here of some different products that could use some additional work on their photos. And Blake, thank you for pulling those up. I would like to cut over and take a look at those real quick as an example. Blake, you want to pull those up on your screen?
It'll probably just take a moment for him to do that.
Sure.
Sure. My screen share has been kind of funky lately, so this might be best for
Well, you said you chatted the links, Blake?
into our webinar jam, right?
Okay.
So
Tim, can you pull those up?
You know why we're doing that? Let me just take a minute here, and I want to just go through, make sure everybody who's partaking today is understands the services that we are offering. So obviously we're talking Amazon today. We are at Awesome Dynamic Amazon Seller Consultants, and we have a lot of different models on how we can help people either get on Amazon or get in a better position to be much more profitable on Amazon. Other things that we do here at Awesome Dynamic is create responsive web design, and we also do search engine optimization. So once we get you a great website, we're going to be able to help drive customers in your direction. The whole basis for everything that we do here is getting you new targeted customers. I'm happy to say that we get calls every day from people looking for help with our services, and by working with us, we can do the same for you. So we have those opportunities available. We also do the Google virtual tours, which is a great way for people to get an online preview of your business, and can also get you a nice little SEO boost in the meantime, especially if your competitors do not have one. On our website, awesomedynamic.com, you can watch any past webinars. We have great blogs for you to take a look at as well. We also have a place where you can get on our awesome list, get on our mailing list, and make sure that you are able to keep abreast of everything we have going on. And we do in our local area have some live events from time to time, and you'll be able to find those on there as well. The last thing I wanted to mention, of course, is at the bottom of our homepage, there's a place to give us a 5-star Google review should you enjoy what you're getting here from us on our webinar. We always would deeply appreciate those reviews. They help us quite a bit, and we would like to know that you're thrilled with what you're seeing, and make sure that everybody else knows that as well. So that is our quick rundown on what we do, and we appreciate if you give us a call at 800-238-1811, or I can always be reached at terry@awesomedynamic.com. So with that being said, we can go right back over to, I guess we have some pictures there to look at.
Yeah, so Tim pulled up this one picture here as a Rev-A-Shelf tray divider with clip, chrome. And we're seeing one picture of it. It's a lifestyle photo. Technically, the main photo should be a background of white, and we're not seeing that here. We're just seeing the product inside here. And in fact, when I take a look at this, I don't know if it's just one of these things. Am I getting several of these things? The picture makes me think I'm going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those wire dividers that are in there. And I'm not sure if that's what I'll get based on the picture. So Tim, tell me your feedback on this picture.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think it is important to show the product in use, and I know that there have been some people that have had success showing props in there. So I like the idea that they are using, pots and pans, and they're showing the product in use. But yeah, I don't know how many exactly come with this. Is it 5 total? Is it supposed to only be 2 of them? Is it like a whole set? I just really don't know exactly what it comes with based off of the picture.
And although a lifestyle photo, while against Amazon regulations to put it in as the main photo, can perform better in the rankings, at least in the click-through ratio that you get. You want to, if you do that, make it super, super clear in what you say about your listing of what exactly you're going to get if a person could potentially be confused. Blake, did you have any comments on this particular picture?
Well, besides the lack of pictures, I wanted to go over how this is a good example of someone who didn't use all 8 photos. I agree with all the points you guys pointed out. In my opinion, this is a bad crop job. It's not centered. I understand they might be trying to show us the door, but to me, it's just a very poorly created photograph to describe this entire product and try and sell this in front of millions of people. I think this is a great example of what not to do, even though they might be selling them very well. That doesn't matter right now. The point is we want you to be able to upload as many photos as you willingly can, up to the 8 limit typically, because this is going to provide trust to the potential customer. It's going to give them more reason to stay on this listing and look around. It might actually make them more inclined to scroll down and see more details. But not that this is a bad photo, because if you do hover over it, it has the zoom ability, so that's something that we will go over to how important that is, because since you can't touch this, like Paul touched on earlier, we want to be able to depict our product that we're selling, or you are selling, to the highest detail so they feel like they can almost touch it. And all 8 photos should almost be this high quality. And one other thing I wanted to point out was the items that are in there as well could also confuse people if it's the primary image, because they might think they're not only getting 5 shelf dividers, but I'm sure there's people out there that might think they're getting that metal serving tray in the middle, the nice little ceramic tray on the right. You never know what people are going to do, and if they purchase this and you start getting negative reviews and returns, Amazon might punish you, and that's quite detrimental and not something you want to look forward to.
So the other thing is, what other photos could we have on here?
Great point.
And I think, yeah, if we were doing this, what would we do? And I know I'd want to see one of them outside of a cabinet on a pure white background, and I want to see those clips. It looks like there's 3 on each one, but I want to see the clips and exactly how they work in close-up detail. So I can't tell if that's a Phillips screwdriver or a Phillips screwdriver screw, or if it's a flathead. How does that little plastic clip work? Does it go around it? I can't really tell. Does it snap into it? It looks like it might snap into it, but I'm sitting here guessing how it works. I shouldn't have to guess. I should be able to just see it. And right now I can't just see it, and that's a problem. We want to be able to just see how the thing works, And even though I can zoom in this picture, I don't get the whole package. I don't understand exactly what I'm getting. And you know what? That's where multiple multiple photos for a product can really help, because I could look at this one photo, and I said earlier, well, if I explain a little bit more in the title or the bullets or whatever, I would know a little bit more about what I'm going to get. But if you do another photo right after this that shows 5 of these things stacked up and all the clips that come next to them sitting right next to it, that would show me explicitly, okay, yes, I'm getting 5 of these and I'm getting 3 clips each. Or if the next photo is just one of them by itself with 3 clips in it, then I know, okay, I'm only getting 1 of these, even though there's 5 in the first picture. I get what I'm going to get. So that's an idea of another picture I put in there, and then maybe doing some pictures where I see the dividers in different situations. So it doesn't say, who's to say that I need to use this in the kitchen? Maybe I use this in my garage. Maybe I use it in my closet. Maybe I use it on my bookshelf in my my office. So those are some different situations we can put these dividers in. And then in each of those situations, I could put maybe towels in between them in the bathroom, or I can put books in between them in my office, or I could put different purses in between them if it was in a closet. So there's different situations I could put these in to really get an idea of all the places I could use it, which can also greatly enhance the sales on this item because right now the presentation of which is this can only be used in the kitchen. So if I don't see all the other situations that I could use the product in, I might not know where I could use the product other than in a kitchen cabinet.
Very good points.
All right, Tim, you want to get back to our list or our PowerPoint?
Yes, let's get back to our presentation. All right. So now that we all kind of understand the basic guidelines around how to use photos, let's drill into a little bit more depth and talk a little bit more about that main image, which we have touched on a little bit already. So, what are the specific requirements for the main image? We already talked about it. The background of the main image must be pure white, and what that means is that it must have an RGB value of 255, 255, 255. The reason for this is because all of Amazon is a pure white background. And same thing with whether you look at the product on your search results page or whether you look at the product on the listing page, you're surrounded in whites. And by having a pure white background, it helps the picture blend in with the rest of the website, and it just looks a lot better and a lot more professional by having the product just basically looks like it's just sitting on the website. It's not clearly just a photo that's just thrown up there. The other important thing about the main image is that it cannot be a graphic or illustration of your product or contain any accessories that are not dispatched with the product, any props that confuse the customer, text that is not part of the product, any logos, watermarks, or inset images. So that's a lot of restrictions as to what you cannot do with the primary image, or the main image. But I want to mostly touch on that graphic or illustration part of it. I think that there's a lot of people who get, let's say if you're a manufacturer and you want to produce a new product, but you don't have the actual product in hand yet, you might want to display a rendering of your particular product. And that specifically is, again, not allowed by Amazon. You can only take photos of the product and put those up with that pure white background. And then the accessories part of that. So going back to making sure that the customer is not confused, we just talked about those shelf, not the shelf dividers, but the cabinet dividers for those tins and everything. We're not sure exactly what was included, what wasn't included. Did they have the screws? Did they not? If you do include any accessories, then they have to come with the product itself. So the fact that none of the tins actually come with the product, but were shown in that picture, is a violation of Amazon's policies. Any questions about that before I move on to the last points?
Yeah, I just want to say the watermarks. A lot of folks want to
Mm,
watermark their images because they find that other people are stealing their images and using them in other places on the internet. But that's something that Amazon specifically restricts because they don't want watermarks all over their images. So although it may be tempting to use that to help protect your images, that's something that you definitely are not supposed to be doing. I
good
guess the
points.
other thing is this is one of those situations where even though Amazon's policy says you're not allowed to do staging of the product in your main product image, it's still a technique to get more clicks onto your product. But if you ever get banned for doing that, that's where you know that that's the policy that you're violating. So this is where, Tim, I like the way you explain it. When it's, I wouldn't say okay, but when crossing the line or walking the gray line is usually okay, and when it's not, and that's where you talk about delivering the better value to the customer, so long as it's customer focused. You want to speak to that for just a
Yes.
second?
Yeah, Amazon always puts the customer's interests first. So I know that there's a lot of sellers out there who think that, oh, Amazon just isn't fair to us buyers. They should be a little bit more, or sorry, fair to us sellers. They should be more accommodating to us. You got to remember that the way that Amazon became as big as they are is because they are extremely customer focused, and they do everything to make the customer experience um, as good as possible. And I believe, and I've had experience with this, where if you make a change to your listing, or let's say kind of walk that gray line with one of their policies on when you do anything to your listing, as long as you are focused on making it better for the customer, then that usually is one of those instances where Amazon will usually kind of turn a blind eye towards that particular violation that you're that in their policy. So you just really have to make sure, like, is this going to confuse the customer, or is this going to help the customer better understand how to use the product or what the product is all about? You really have to kind of ask yourself that. You don't want to just add a bunch of images and everything else just because you want to increase sales, where then later on you end up getting a bunch of returns and a bunch of unhappy customers, which then can lead to negative feedback, and it ends up catching up with you if you decide to do it. But and that's why Amazon has these guidelines here in the first place. But yeah, again, as long as you're customer centric in your decisions, I think Amazon will usually be okay with what you decide to do. And that's not a blessing to say go ahead and do it. It's just our experience has told us that.
And the one thing that you can do is submit your picture to Amazon as a case.
Yes.
I mean, you could certainly submit it and say, the reason why I wanted to put this in this staged manner is because you can't tell what it is by looking at it with the white background. Is this okay? And you send them the picture that you propose. And they'll get back to you and say, yeah, this picture is fine, or you know what, this picture isn't good, or maybe they'll give you some constructive feedback on things that you can change. So that's an option open to you if you're afraid of walking the gray line without getting a blessing from Amazon. That's certainly an option that you have open to you.
Very good points. All right, and then the last item I wanted to bring up is, as we talked about before, white backgrounds are recommended for every image, but not required. You can use environments in the background. You can use other backgrounds if you feel like it's going to better enhance the product. Like, let's say if your product is white in color and it's really, really hard to, kind of contrast that. Sometimes for your additional images, it may make more sense to use a different color as your background. But for the most part, you really want to make sure that your main image does have that pure white background.
And then on these additional images, that's where the lifestyle photos can really help enhance the positioning of how your product is perceived by the people that are shopping for your product versus other things that might, other competitive products that are in the category. So additional images, white backgrounds recommended, but let's look at it from the optimization standpoint. if I can make my customer feel like my product's more valuable, or it's going to make the person that I give it to as a gift happy because I see a picture of a happy person holding the product, those are just little subtle things that can really make a huge difference in somebody perceiving the value of your product. So that's where those lifestyle images of attractive people wearing clothes, there's a reason why all your clothing manufacturers do that. Or when you see different commercials on TV of people presenting products in a TV commercial, there's a reason why there's happy, smiling people doing things with those different products, because it elicits an emotion that can help make people perceive more value and maybe even do an instant purchase on that item. So those are different things to consider with those secondary items. Is instead of just having just the product, or just the product with some kind of creative background, think about using people to elicit emotion, or putting your product in a situation that's high end. So if you want people to get the idea that your gift basket is high end for some reason, and you want to charge a little bit more money for that product, think about the background and how that background can help enhance the value that somebody perceives in that situation.
Excellent points. All right, so we had a really good overview of what products or what the standards are for all the products. I want to get into more technical detail, but before I do that, I didn't know if we wanted to kind of do a little bit of promotion for Awesome Dynamic. Terry, did you have anything that you wanted to talk about before we moved on?
No, I think I think we did cover already most of the things that I want to say. Just as it goes with our Amazon consulting, I guess this would be a good time for us to mention that, we do have a varied way of helping new clients on Amazon, and it can be as simple as setting up an account for somebody. We offer a full management program where we literally take over that account and manage every aspect of it. And then we also have availability of an on-demand program where you just simply purchase a block of our time, and we can help you learn how to do certain things. We can help do things for you, and just improve your overall Amazon presence with those hours. And then that's not a ongoing model as our management would be. So a lot of different ways, and we like to be very creative with coming up with solutions that fit our clients. We like to partner with our clients and see them become very successful on Amazon. So those are some of the ways that we can help, and we're always available to discuss those at any time at our 800-238-1811 number, or Terry at awesomedynamic.com. So there you have it. So right back to you, Tim. Let's keep going.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Terry. All right, so let's get a little bit more into technical detail. Okay, I'm going to be taking all these pictures. What do I have to keep in mind when I take these pictures? How do I do it? All that kind of information. So first, let's go over image size requirements. There are two different ways you can add product to Amazon. You can either add it through Amazon's web interface, or you can use Excel spreadsheets that are called flat files to upload all the information to Amazon. And that's usually the better way to do it, because you are able to get a more detailed listing, a little bit more complete and optimized listing, and you can do it in a bulk a lot easier. But we're not here to talk about that necessarily. We're here to talk about the image requirements for each method. So first is the flat file method. So in the flat file method, images should be 1,000 pixels or more in either height or width, and this will enable the zoom function on the website. So let me quickly go back to that one image that we looked at before. The one really positive thing that we have for this particular image is the fact that it says right at the bottom here, roll over image to zoom in. The only way that you can have this kind of functionality built in is if your picture is high enough resolution. And as you see, the way to do that is by having at least 1,000 pixels or more in either height or width. Now, on the opposite end, this is where making sure you have a high quality enough camera. If there's anything that has less than 500 pixels on the longest side, those images will be rejected. So it's important to make sure that you have at least 500 pixels on the longest side when you create those images. And then the next thing is that images should be no more than 10 megabytes. Now, before, it used to be 4 megabytes, but it looks like Amazon has upgraded that limit to now 10 megabytes per photo. That's a large photo. that's something where I don't think anyone's really going to be reaching that particular limit. And to be quite honest, if you start to get up towards that particular size, don't forget that this is a website, and you're not going to actually be able to take advantage of that kind of quality, even when you're zoomed into it. That being said, I think even though it says images should be no more than 10 megabytes, I'd say I'd still recommend probably sticking around 4 or 5 megabytes at most, just to make it a little bit easier to send the files up to Amazon, and I think those would be plenty of quality. Any comments on the file size or any of that information before I go on to the last points?
Last time I looked at this, Tim, I remember it was 4 megabytes, but that was a couple years ago before I had you guys working on everything. So that's where 10 megabytes is a huge file. You could take a photo that's 10 megabytes and blow it up in a little crystal clear on the side of a house. So you don't need it that big. And usually when we're consulting with people who are doing search engine optimization on their websites, that photo before it zooms really should be less than 100 kilobytes. So, and then obviously the zoom photo, if you were to actually download it from Amazon, they're going to optimize that. They don't want their site running really slow either. So they're going to optimize those different things. So no matter what you upgrade to there, they will be compressing it in some manner. It just looks like they're upping the ante on how much they're willing to accept, so then they must optimize it down. But just some different things to keep in mind. They're not going to actually serve out your 10 megabyte or 4 megabyte file. They'll be processing it in their system to reduce it so their site doesn't run really, really slow.
Very good points. And the last thing is, okay, what file format should I use? JPEG is preferred. They do accept, I believe, PNGs as well as GIFs, and people can argue with me how that's pronounced all day long. I still think it's GIF. But yes, that is, they do prefer JPEGs when it comes to the file formats.
GIFs, that's right.
Thanks, Paul.
All right. So tell us about the web interface.
Yeah, so the web interface. Amazon actually makes a nice little chart here to tell you all the details. Now, I don't think many of our viewers would use are doing books, but we'll kind of concentrate on the single items section here. The minimum dimensions is only 200 by 200 pixels if you're doing any images, and maximum dimensions is 2000 by 2000. So you can see that the requirements are different for each method. And you can also see further below where it says that all photos submitted will be scaled to 500 by 500 pixels, which is what the product looks like when, again, let me kind of go back to our example listing here. If I hover over this, it's going to zoom it in, but I bet you this is probably about 500 by 500 pixels on this listing right here. So it's going to get scrunched down to that size, but if it is larger, again, it will enable this zooming feature. So you want to make sure you don't just do the bare minimum so that people can zoom in on it.
I'm actually amazed they're allowing people to upload photos that are 200 by 200, because then they're going to scale it up to 500 by 500, which will make it look horribly pixelated, and that wouldn't be good at all. So that's where, even though you can, I just wouldn't. Size the picture the appropriate size from the beginning, and the large. Obviously, you can see in the web interface you can't even get a really high resolution picture in there because they're limiting you to 2000 by 2000 pixels for the upload through their web interface. Whereas going back to the 10 megabyte or 4 megabyte picture, those could be literally 15,000 by 15,000 pixels just to get a ton of extra detail. So you can see that the web interface is somewhat limiting and can actually make you look bad because you're not able to. They're going to scale up a tiny photo, which is kind of crazy.
And one other thing.
Whoops,
go
sorry,
ahead. Go ahead, Blake.
Sorry, Tim. It's just a general. in a world, in a website full of text, your images are going to stand out like a sore thumb, and it's the whole reason we're doing an entire webinar on this, is just to show you how important your pictures for your products are to the general population, and I just wanted to enforce that. But go ahead, Tim.
Thank you, Blake. Yeah, that's a good point. Then the last thing I wanted to talk about is the maximum dimension ratio. Amazon really likes to have one-to-one ratio in terms of when you actually format the picture. One thing we were noticing is sometimes if you look at a bunch of products, especially like let's say if you look at let's say a page full of vitamin bottles or supplement bottles, sometimes you'll see that products are kind of shifted over to one side, and sometimes you'll see that there's products that are in the middle of the page. And the difference between those is how the product image was cropped. So let's do a quick search here. So let's look at vitamins. All right, so these all seem to be pretty well done. I think we actually saw it on a different page because I know, Paul, you and I were looking at this just the other day, correct?
That's right.
What was it that we were looking at? I think we were looking at like probiotics or something like that, right?
Right. But the picture that we had identified, basically, here, just keep there for a second. So see how this
Sure.
eco probiotic there is in the center. If you look from left to right, actually, it is shifted over to the left. That one, the eco one.
Yes, it is.
Slightly
Yeah.
shifted over to the left. It's a perfect example. So you can see it's shifted over to the left. That's because the product wasn't centered in the image, or the image was cropped really tightly around the bottle. Tim, do
So
you
if
want to
you
elaborate on that?
Yeah, so let me see if I can really demonstrate this a little bit different. So I'm going to take a quick screenshot of this. So how it was probably cropped was like this, where there's markers all around it just like this. But I think the best way to crop it is to try and do as much of a square as possible, kind of like this. This way it's one-to-one ratio, same length as it is width.
Unlike our modern flat screen TVs, we want it to be a square. Try and make it a square.
That's right. That's
All
right.
right.
Excellent. All right, we have a couple other things to finish covering in here. The next thing I wanted to talk about was, again, kind of moved right into this section already, is outlining and cropping images. Amazon wants to make sure that your product fills 85% or more of the image. There's been many times where I've seen a lot of white space around a product, and it makes the product just look really, really small in the image. And we really want to kind of reiterate why it's important to make sure you do cropping correctly, is because, and also the outlining part of it, because outlining it, again, is all about that white background to make it blend in with the website and make it look as professional as possible. But you'll get less blank space overall if you do that. It'll be a better user experience because it's more consistency when someone looks at all the different listings. That yours doesn't stick out like a sore thumb in a bad way. High quality swatches. Swatches are, let's say if you have different versions of your product and there's a little picture of it in the listing, then that little image is called a swatch, and it's very low resolution. So if you don't have it cropped out and you don't have it outlined properly, those swatches can look really, really terrible. It allows the zooming in of the images, especially if it's high enough quality and has the right number of pixels. More uniformity across Amazon. And it's, again, as I touched on before, it's seamless integration with Amazon's user interface with the white background.
So that white background, a lot of people are kind of perplexed. Well, how do I do that and make it look good? How do I outline? So you to outline the product. In Photoshop, you could use the magic wand, but you're not going to get really good results with that. The best way to do it is using the pen tool, and then you create what's called a vector mask in Photoshop after you outline the product with the pen tool, and you actually zoom in quite a bit on the product, and you're just outlining it like you'd be drawing. If let's say you took the picture and you were just drawing a perfect line around every little nook and cranny of the picture on a piece of paper, you do the same thing using Photoshop with the pen tool, and you get into all those little nook and crannies really, really close. And then once you connect it back to the beginning point, the end point to the beginning point, then you can knock out that whole background, and it's perfectly white. So that's what we mean by knocking out the background. And that takes a little of experience to do, but once you get good at it, you can get quite fast at getting that done.
Excellent points. And that brings us right into our last slide for today is what kind of equipment and software do we use or do we recommend? First, light tents and softboxes. The lighting is so important, but oftentimes what happens is if people decide that they want to use just household lights, which certainly can be a great way to start, what happens is the light is very harsh and it creates just a very flat and plain looking image. It doesn't really bring it to life. What you really want to use is light tents or softboxes to soften the light and make it disperse a little bit more and make it look a little bit more even on the product itself. So that's one of the important things that you want to make sure you have.
It'll help you avoid some glare on that product too, wouldn't it, Tim?
Yes, it would. Absolutely, it would. Thank you for bringing that up.
Sure.
Next thing is studio lighting. So what kind of lights did you get? Should I get, traditionally studio lighting was made with incandescent bulbs, but those are very hot. They are very high energy usage. Then we started to move into CFLs, which are certainly a lot better. And then you have probably the most modern type, which is LED lights, which not only are very low power usage, but they also are able to be very portable and very flexible. So that kind of goes in order of least recommended to most recommended.
And they don't heat up the room you're working on to get this photography done either.
Yes, indeed, absolutely, that's true. The next thing is it's recommended that you use daylight temperature bulbs. So oftentimes when you go to the store, there's different colors or different color temperatures. When you look at bulbs, they say, there's daytime, there's soft white, there's a bunch of different kinds. And what you're looking for is really daylight temperature, which will basically mimic what your actual what the actual sun produces when you're outside during the day. So that gives you the most true to light or true to life colors when you take pictures of the product. And I think at the same time, if you do use lights that are daylight temperature, you want to make sure that you turn off all other lights that are different colors so that you don't have some kind of weird mix where the camera's a little confused and it just doesn't look nearly as good. So that's pretty much all lighting. Getting more into the equipment that you want to use, we recommend a high quality camera. Best kind of camera to use is some kind of DSLR, and that's the kind of camera where you can swap lenses in and out, and you just have a lot more control over how the image is taken. Most people are intimidated by these DSLRs because they're big, they have a lot of buttons and they have a lot of functions on them. Oftentimes, they do have a very simple automatic mode built into them, which is certainly going to be good enough for your for starting out. But there's a lot of things that you can learn and a lot of things that you can do on it if you're willing to learn. And then the next thing is we do recommend getting multiple lenses depending on what kind of product you want to shoot. Most DSLRs do come with what's called a kit lens, which gives you some zooming capabilities. It's a wide-angle lens. This way you can get more of the product into the image. The only downside is that kit lenses sometimes introduce what's called distortion. So sometimes if you take a picture of something, the edges of it may look kind of curved instead of straight, whereas if it's a box, the sides are supposed to be straight. Well, kit lenses sometimes can introduce a distortion like that. The other item that you might want to think about, or another lens that you might want to think about doing or getting, is a macro lens. A macro lens is going to let you take pictures of smaller objects in a lot more detail than a standard lens. Sometimes, a standard lens you just can't get close enough and get enough detail in there. And then the last lens that we recommend is a 35 or 50 millimeter fixed focal length lens. Oftentimes these lenses are really small looking and they are extremely basic. They also are very inexpensive. Usually you can get one for about $100 to $200, which is very inexpensive for a lens. And this lens, you don't zoom in and out. You move back and forth to get the product into the frame. That's probably the one big difference between using that versus, let's say, the lens that came with the camera. The advantage, though, is that you don't get any kind of distortion. Usually, they allow you to take a lot brighter photographs when it's dimly lit. And overall, they are just really some of the best lenses to use for not only product photography, but also a lot of portrait photographers use them, landscape photographers use them. They're just a really good lens to use all around. They are sometimes difficult to use, but I think the results are really good if you're willing to learn. And then we mentioned this earlier. We recommend using Adobe Photoshop with that pen tool to be able to do all that product outlining and possibly do some color correction and final exporting of the photo into the final pixel aspect ratio and file format.
Yeah, Adobe Photoshop also gives you the opportunity, once you have that particular product in a layer and you're offering, let's say, a 3-pack or a 5-pack of it, you can just duplicate or triplicate the layer, and then it's as if you had 3 sitting in front of you when you were shooting it in the studio, but you're actually creating the different copies and essentially creating the photo with the real item that you did the photography with. Couple other things, Tim, that I think it would be great to add on here is just kind of the technique that you use in the photo studio to do certain things. Obviously, having a tripod handy is a good thing to have in certain circumstances. I know there's that effect where you have the reflection that looks like it's below the product, and it kind of shows some of that stuff there. You actually do that with a piece of glass.
Yeah, that's a hard effect to pull off. You really need good lighting to be able to do that, but really effective for the listings.
But Tim, you want to get into some of the other techniques that you use when you're taking some photos?
Yeah, going back to the whole white background thing, making sure that you use a white background that can either be a piece of muslin cloth, white muslin cloth. That's very popular. In fact, that's what I have hanging behind me. If I turn off and show you my camera here, this is a piece of muslin cloth that's pure white, and when lit properly, it does kind of give you a good background to be able to shoot everything on. And then the other thing, like Paul mentioned, was a tripod to keep your camera steady when you take any pictures. But in terms of techniques, just take more photos than less. It's one of those things where you never can, you're using digital film, which means you don't run out of film. So just take more and more pictures at different angles, from different, have the product positioned in different ways. And I think if you do that, it's going to be really, really effective.
And spending your time with staging, I know we did a lot of board game photography at one time and breaking out all those pieces and getting everything, all the little cards that came in the game lined up in a nice little arch, and the space between each corner of the next card to the next card to the next card. We spent painstaking amount of time getting everything looking really good, but it was way better than any photo that the manufacturer could have put together, and it really presented the product in a way that was just awesome. One thing that I see all the time, people take pictures of boxes. The box, the product comes in, and they do a straight-on shot of the box. And I think that's something that it's a 3D object. Why make it seem like it's 2D? So if you put the box at an angle and then take a picture, it feels more lifelike, more realistic. So those are missed opportunities we see all the time that you can certainly do to enhance the listing through really, really good photography.
Good points.
All right, so I think we could wrap it up here. A great webinar on how to really pay attention to your photos. Didn't think we could talk a whole hour on photos, but they are so important. They are the huge thing that people make decisions on when they're looking at the listings. If your photography is completely optimized, you have lifestyle photos, great angles of all the different sides of the product and everything else, and you have a terrible description, it can almost help compensate for that terrible description. So it's all about the perception. When people are comparing what they want to buy, having your listing being optimized with really fantastic photography could really make a huge difference in the amount of sales that you have on Amazon.
Excellent.
All
right, so I think we should sign off. Terry, you want to wrap us up?
Absolutely. Want to thank everybody for joining us today. Had a great conversation about Amazon photos, and as Paul said, that's one of the most important things about a listing. We see issues with them every day. If you need help with us, again, doing that for you, we do photography on a local basis for our Amazon clientele. 800-238-1811 or Terry at awesomedynamic.com. If you found our webinar today to be valuable to you, we always look for a Google 5-star review, and you can do that right at awesomedynamic.com. We have a place for you to go right there. There you'll see it, and go ahead and take care of that for us. We sure would appreciate it. We are doing our webinars every Thursday now at 12:30 Central, so no reason to check the times anymore. We're every week at 12:30 Central Time, and we'd love to have you. Bring your questions, bring your issues, bring your friends. We'd love to hear from you. And go ahead.
Hey, Terry, you said we do the photography on a local basis. That means we're not going to come to your location and do the photography, but you certainly can send us boxes of your products, and we'll take care of all of them. Isn't that right, Terry?
Absolutely true.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And, Tim does a great job with the photography, and we have some great examples for you if you want to see them as well. So with that being said, I'm going to sign off for Tim, Blake, and Paul. We appreciate you being here, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Take care.
Adios.